Yeah.
All right, so welcome everybody to Torogi Talk, where we attempt to unpack anything and everything Igorot. Whether it's through story or discussion, we hope to increase the awareness of our people and hopefully inspire others to seek a greater understanding of our culture, just as we are. Today we don't actually have like a special guest. We seem to have been doing that more often, but yeah, not today. We're also down one person, so Jay's handling some other business, so you're just stuck with the three of us here. Um, but I think today we're going to do a little bit something a little bit different. We're going to be going over a video of what do you call it? Children's stories that have been or that are being released out in Philippines. Or are they released, Mark, or not yet?
They're already released, and there we can maybe talk about how you can access them.
Sounds good.
Maybe at the end of the our little discussion here. But they're
Yeah.
definitely accessible, and we'll try and we'll shoot the context after we do our thing.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're anything like, I mean, my wife has been looking for um, like Filipino books, and then even anything like Cordilleran related would be awesome. But we're kind of struggling to find that for sure. There's definitely some Tagalog ones, and then for the kids and stuff. But I think this is one of the first ones that
Mhm.
I've heard of that go along that line. So this is pretty interesting, and they have like a bit of a, I guess it's a bit of a promotional video. It's a
Mhm.
little longer than I expected it was going to be, but they end up um, going over or reading some of the books. So I think we're just going to go through that today, and then just provide our input into the video and what they're saying and what they're doing, because it's pretty exciting and it's something new, and yeah,
Yeah.
we would definitely love to promote it to whoever's watching and or listening there. So if you're listening on the podcast, ideally, yes, maybe this one would be a good one to hop on YouTube to check out. But you can still at least hear the stories, unless we're just talking over them. But hopefully not. Um, all right, so maybe let's just go into
So it'll
share.
be a bit of a reaction video, I guess, right?
Right, exactly.
It'll
I
be a
actually
little bit of
haven't.
reaction over.
Yeah, I haven't watched the whole video. I just know like I was skipping through the content, and yeah, it's
Mhm.
a bit of what they're doing, and then they read some of the stories. So,
I
Mhm.
haven't seen what you're gonna show us, so
Yeah, excited to
exciting.
watch it. Excited to watch
yeah,
it.
I think I was telling you guys I expected it to have more relics and stuff, but it seems like a lot of their focus, especially right now, is textile. So, just so that you know, if you
Mm,
haven't been at the Museo Kordilyera,
they changed.
yeah, it's a lot of textiles. It's very textile focused, but there is a lot of information on it, which is pretty cool.
It's also interesting to note
Yeah.
that they changed. I think the gallery that they show. I think every 2 years or something like that. Last time I was there,
Is
back in
that what it is?
2019. Yeah, yeah. They had
Yeah.
not so much focus on textiles, but in actual rituals. And their biggest show was doing a lot of like Ifugao rituals.
Yeah, I think it just depends on like the research that they want to focus on at that time. And
Yeah.
then usually what it seems like is like when they've gathered their research, then they've the one that whatever they're studying at the time, then they present it out. Like the tattoos was one of them when they were
Mhm.
spotlighting that one about, was it 3 years ago now or 4 years ago? Time flies, man. But
Oh, that would have been a good one to see,
yeah,
but
textiles are, yeah. I think they still have, well, they still have some of the statues out there and
yeah, yeah,
stuff,
they still have a little bit
as
of
far
it,
as I
but
know.
yeah, it's not highlighted for sure. All right.
Cool.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
and
not. This is
if
the highlight now. I think it's the textile.
yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and just to let everybody know, if you do hear a little bit of background noise, that's our fans, most likely, just because it's quite the heat wave going on now.
All
So I
of
apologize for
all
that
of
if
our
you do
fans.
hear it, but I am hoping our, what do you call it, noise suppression
Noise
is good
suppression.
enough.
Yeah.
So, all right, we can go right into the video. Here we go.
Awesome. Oh man, exciting.
Hey everyone, I would like to welcome you to this very important event, which is the launching of Kordilyera children's book on weaving. This very noble project is part of the Corditex research being undertaken by the University of the Philippines Baguio faculty, headed by the director of the Museo Kordilyera, Dr. Annalyn Salvador Amores, and other colleagues from the different disciplines in the social sciences, management, arts and communications, and College of Science. I am very proud of this project because it exemplifies what we do, which is to conduct interdisciplinary researches on various topics and issues in the Cordillera region and Northern Luzon. These books satisfy a need today, which is to transmit indigenous knowledge, to the current and future generation of people, especially among the indigenous peoples in the Cordillera and Northern Luzon. As we know, the knowledge bearers and the master craftsmen and women in weaving, particularly, many of them are getting old, some are passing away, others have gone abroad for greener pastures. And so there's a need to continue teaching the tradition of weaving so that it will not die, so that culture will also continue to flourish. So congratulations again, Dr. Amores and team, and mabuhay kayo at ipagpatuloy ninyo ang inyong ginagawang mga proyekto para sa kultura, para sa lipunan ng mga katutubo sa Cordillera. Thank you.
That's a really important thing. I mean, like, anything we're doing, BPOC is doing, we're trying to preserve our culture. I mean, it's not just weaving, but it's awesome that they're doing something like this for weaving. Now, if we could get something for everything else as well.
Which is what's cool about the museum, because they're tapping into all kinds of different subjects.
That is why I have such an affinity to our country's rich textile tradition. Pinagmamalaki ko, nakasama ako sa proyektong ito. Ang mga aklat na ito ay hindi lang mga kwento. Sa loob ng mga pahina ay ang ating sining, kultura, at kasaysayan. Maraming salamat sa creative team, sa Corditex, at sa UP Baguio. To our weavers, agyaman nak ako.
You've looked into if these are available, right?
I haven't. No, I haven't looked.
The books.
Yeah.
I talked to Annalyn. They are available. These books are available. Yeah.
But how do we get them here?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I was wondering if we're saying that Audrey wanted.
They have. Okay, so might as well just talk about it now then. So all you have to do is go on Facebook. You contact Museo Kordilyera, and they will. They have contacts in different parts in Canada. They have contacts in different parts of the United States and over here in the UK. So I was about to order a bunch, and just to bring over here and to share with some family members. So you can buy them in like groups, or I mean you can just get just a few that you want, or you can get the whole set or a few sets, then send them to your family members. But they'll definitely, if you just message them on Facebook, they'll be able to share where they're who to contact and where to pay. So it's pretty simple.
It's good to know.
Oh, this is pretty cool. Look at that.
Yeah, that's awesome. If these are added to the new textbooks instead of all those other stuff, you know what I mean?
What other stuff? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
The ones that are still there.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about this actually a little bit. So my grandmother used to also weave, and I still have one of her last tapes that she made. And what was really cool about it is that it still has a lot of different intricate, characters that she put on there. And when I got married, when we had the invitations, we had a graphic artist who was a friend of ours. Basically, zoom in and copy the different aspects of that tapis, and then she put it on our card, our invite. And so it was a little bit special because those designs that she had were from my grandma's last tapis that she made, and it was special. So yeah.
Amazing.
Do you guys have any stories like that? Any do you have any relatives who are still weaving and stuff,
Not that I know of.
or like any?
Even in
Yeah.
terms of like having
Which is
old, like their original tapes and stuff like that. I think it's more so my dad's side that might have those types of things, but I don't know. I don't even know if on my mom's side they have that. I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of folks, especially if they weren't the first child, didn't get some of the heirlooms. Usually it goes down to the first child, but some of these heirlooms, some people just kind of went and gone in some families, and it's nobody's fault. It just is what it is, And it's just a shame. Like when I think of my grandma and that skill she had, I wish she could have even though I'm a guy, I wish she could have taught it to me. But then you also need a special weaving machine and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But one of the things she told me is that a lot of the reason why it's harder for the old folks to teach it, she said to get the nice intricate patterns, when you get old, the problem is your eyesight goes bad.
Right.
So she said It was hard to I don't know if that was one of the reasons why it wasn't so easy to pass down and to teach, but it could have been because for some, especially since there was less and less older folks teaching it. But it's kind of cool because now we're seeing this whole revolution of Igorotness, amongst our people, where there's a pride in the culture, and now people want to hold on to that part that is amazing and good, and I think it's awesome. And there are other, what's interesting too is because these patterns aren't just our patterns, right? We know that these patterns, they cross into other cultures, especially under mountain tribes that are in Southeast Asia and even in Taiwan. So I find that pretty interesting, like the turtle and the lizards that you see on there and the snakes. This is common kind of spirituality that goes across the board.
Yeah.
I just wish that before my grandma died, I had asked her even more about, why did you choose those things? What was it about it, that to you, or you knew why you put the little, so they had you'll see spear, you'll see shield, you'll see the little man, right?
Yeah,
sometimes you'll see the lizard, the turtle,
There's
those
eyes.
kind of things. There's there's eyes, the direction of the arrows. But I know there's some of these books that are coming out that are talking all about those aspects, which is pretty cool. And I think that's what's awesome about this project, because kids will be able to access this. It's not going to be in the form of some just intellectual book.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
just
That's
academia, that is.
exactly. I think that's the important part. It's just anybody, especially kids, if they can pick it up like that, that'd be so amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I definitely have to get my daughters to check this out. Even my nephews, I think this is just something that we got to keep, And
Mhm.
I don't
Absolutely.
know, man, if there's a way to bring a workshop abroad, even to show the basics, would be amazing. Anyways, let's just keep it going.
I think stuff like that has been done. I just don't know who's been doing them. I
I
remember
think they did in
before,
some IIC. Some people showed. Yeah. I
even
wish
in some
wish
kanyaos
if
that
Amanda was here then.
I've seen. Yeah,
You had some Kanyas that you guys did.
I feel like people were doing stuff. I don't know if I'm just remembering that incorrectly, Udall, but I thought there was in
Um.
Seattle, or maybe it
Yeah, in
wasn't
Pog
like a
31.
formal. Maybe it wasn't a formal thing.
Pog 31 2009. I specifically remember like
Oh, Pagdiriwang. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a presentation where they had a replica loom
Yeah,
or an actual loom, and they were doing
Replica.
demonstrations. I think I
I
could remember it wrong, but they had it like the loom was there, like that
did.
you saw where everything would go and everything. Like
Did they
yeah,
have the full
the
loom or the
weaves.
one that like hung, and then the other side is on you? That's what I remember.
I that's that I
Like the
remember. Okay,
one like
that's
the
it.
one in the picture?
That's the one.
Like
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
the one
yeah,
in the
yeah.
picture. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Like
That one's way
not a
more
full
portable.
loom.
It's
Yeah.
more portable.
No,
Yeah.
that being
It's
actually,
more
did
like
we have?
it's the more practical one.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I'm looking at looms right now, and did we have like I've seen videos of
The big
like
ones.
Ifugao Nation. They're weaving right with the more contemporary like tradition like the looms that you would see being used more prominently. But the one that is on that picture there, the one that I specifically remember from Pagdiri one, that
Yeah.
was a bit more. What's the word? What's the term? Like um, a bit less.
This one is what you would see like in the households and stuff, right? Usually,
Yeah, yeah,
I think.
yeah. I was trying to
Like the
think
big
of the
looms
word.
are seem just for like commercial use. So I don't know how
Right.
many people
Yeah.
actually had it before.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. That's gonna say.
Those
Like,
big ones.
Yeah, like at Easter
The
school
ones inside
and
your house are like the one that
mhm,
the girl.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the looms in like Easter school
Yeah.
or I
Exactly.
saw when we were
So
in
they got
Kalinga.
weaving.
Exactly. Yeah, and then Kalinga as well, and their I forgot what theirs is called, but same thing. But not as big as the Easter school ones
Mm-hmm.
because they were like all outdoor and they were just lined up. But I
mhm.
wish they were open. They weren't
Yeah.
open the day we decided to try to drop in. But oh well.
Oh
All right.
man. It's
Uh,
always when you want to go.
exactly.
Yeah, but the one my grandma was talking about is like the one that's more like the little girl,
Yeah.
Mm,
just the one that kind of hangs over and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see
interesting.
like if your eyes are getting bad, it's harder to make the patterns to be consistent, I guess. But yeah,
Kind of
that's
like
the one that she
tattooing.
was talking about to me when I was a kid.
Mm,
Yeah, I know. It was my great grandmother is the one that had those all the tattoos, but back then the shame culture was pretty bad, so I have pictures of my great grandmother, but she's always wearing a jacket. And it's
mhm.
so messed up, man, because at that time it's just, you know, every time she would go down down the mountain, of course people throw rocks at her or talk smack, you know what I mean, saying stuff. So, to avoid that, sometimes she just had to, you know, keep a jacket on so people
Sorry,
wouldn't see the
when she
tattoos.
went to the lowlands, you mean?
Yeah, because like when they want to sell stuff, and then they walk down the mountain, or if they need to buy certain things or trade or whatever when they go back up and down the mountain. Sometimes you you get haggled.
Yeah.
Mm.
And these are the kinds of things that a lot of
to
people didn't
prevent
realize
that.
that our ancestors, grandparents, whatever, had to
Our
put up
parents, man.
with. So it's parents, exactly. Like it's
Yeah.
so I didn't really want to bring it up too much, but so in terms of like things where people appropriate our stuff or misappropriate our stuff or just take our stuff without acknowledgement, it's just like that's why a lot of us get upset. It's just like you're not honoring it properly, and you don't even have the basic knowledge of what our people, ancestors, parents had to put up with when they were living lives as Cordillerans, Igorots, when they were living this culture.
Yeah.
So
That's why I guess right. That's why it gets a little disappointing when people try to claim that they're us, or use our stuff and just say, "Oh yeah, it's my indigenous blood," when they're not really. Their family members never had to go through that. I mean, there's nothing wrong. If you wear it and you honor where it comes from. But if you're from one area, you can honor where you're from instead of like, trying to misrepresent. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think some people are just they just don't know. They just don't know. There's this sense of just being pan Filipino, which is I get that. That's cool because then you can find pride in just being Filipino in general, especially if you don't know much about where you came from where your family came from in the Philippines, and you just want to have some pride in something. Then you see something that's Igorot, and you go, "Oh yeah, that's me," and you just like put it on. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can feel my brownness come through."
Yeah.
But I think you gotta educate yourself in terms of just trying to find out where this is from and who the people are, because our culture is not dead, right? So yeah, it gets a little bit, I don't know,
complicated,
as you said, annoying. How complicated? Yeah, that's what you meant. Sorry, I almost put words in your mouth. I think that's I was projecting.
There you go. No, it's just wanted to mention that. Actually, one of the things I wanted to say was, if you have stories, or anybody listening or watching, if you have stories of things like discrimination, as an Igorot, of course, or if you've heard of anything like that, I think we'd love to hear about it. So like either contact us or like comment in the comment section below. We'd love to hear those stories because actually it's interesting because one of our probably most popular or more commented on videos talks about that I think we were talking about other Filipinos discriminating against Igorots and stuff like that, and people were agreeing, but I wasn't necessarily seeing. I would have liked to see stories and sharing what people had, because
right,
obviously it's happening. It's been happening. I think it's still happening. So and not everybody knows that. So it'd be nice to see what people have, what kind of stories people can share, because I think at the end of it, our stories is how we're gonna learn and grow and just promote that awareness. And now at least we have, as opposed to our ancestors, we have things like podcasts and YouTube and video cameras and mediums to share these stories. Like it's good to put that out there, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's part of also why we're here, is because we want to share your stories. So I mean, there's in some places where people have been hurt badly emotionally and physically, like in South Africa, where they had apartheid, and also with all the indigenous folks of the Americas, the North Americas, they all have been going through things called Truth and Reconciliation Council. And part of the Truth and Reconciliation is to talk your story. And so whether it be, I mean, it would be great if we could get you on film, but to share those kind of stories is one, cathartic, because it allows you to express what has happened to you, and that's part of the process of healing. And then there's the other process where you get to bring truth and awareness to other people of what has happened to you. And the nice thing about this is that it keeps us from being victims, because the one thing you don't want is to have a victim type of attitude or feeling. And the best way to do is just to share your truth and talk your story, and have other people hear it and learn about it, so that the next generations don't have to deal with that, and people can become more aware about what our people have gone through.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then just going off of that and the whole, other individuals not understanding where we're coming from or our standpoint. It's just like I don't know if it's, I don't know. I'm probably gonna go off at a tangent here, but that's just what we're experiencing here on our end. We're just noticing a lot more of these misappropriated situations coming up, or at least we're seeing it more, hearing it more, something like that. Yeah, it just keeps coming up. I mean, I know we talked about appropriation already. I think in their second podcast or something like that. But
yeah, it was like the second. It was like the early podcast.
Exactly.
And you can search that on the YouTube.
Yeah. And I mean, we kind of touched lightly on it, but there's just so much more to it, and I don't think it's gonna go away until it's addressed, and yeah, we talk about it more, and even let the other side, or the other individuals, not Igorot or even Filipino or whatever, just shine some light on the situation, just to let them know, hey, I mean, this is why it bugs us. Like it's there's a lot more to it, but
yeah,
I don't know. Because, well, maybe I can let Idol rant about our situation here right now, but
go on.
if you want, I don't know.
Well, I think the sentiment is shared, where most of our feelings comes to the fact that when we see a lot of these examples of misappropriation and cultural appropriation, that is the fact that it's essentially enacting the notion that we don't exist and that we're not here. Like a lot of the examples that we've brought up in the past episodes, and hell, we can bring it up now if anything, but like a lot of the examples that we can call upon are one where they don't know much about Igorot culture and they don't know about their own culture. Also, the another example would be they're very interested in the Igorot culture. However, they haven't come to terms or have not gone into um, actually reaching out to those of Igorot descent and had any sort of dialogue with them,
yeah,
and have just sort of carried on with the iconography of Igorotness, and essentially, taking it upon themselves to be that, essentially saying that they're Igorot, or
yeah,
because there's one thing about promoting culture, and there's another where it's like, essentially, for to me, the best way I could describe it in the most like personal form would be like stealing. Like if someone was to say where my one is, if he was an Igorot, it'd be fine, because for one thing, I would know him. He'd be from Bibak. But there are a lot of instances where there's individuals or there's groups where they're wearing garb that's either similar to ours or a mimic of ours, and essentially in the title of their videos saying that it's an Igorot example of what they're wearing, which is completely wrong. And it leaves much to be desired, the actual dialogue of having dialogue, and it like a lot of our frustration is the fact that we're not included in it, and or we're not being consulted about it, which is really interesting to me, because we've talked about an example before where there's a specific podcast where I'm sure they're Igorots, And I totally honor their identity. However, like they from a lot of the experiences that most of the people we know, when they approach them, it's not very amicable, and it's sort of like if if we're trying to get to the same goal where it's promoting culture and it's promoting cultural identity, which is ours, which is a personal thing. It's why are we like why aren't we coming to the same table? Why is it you're here and we're there? And the biggest examples that really bother us is the fact that there's a dialogue here about Igorot culture. However, we're not even in the room. And that's like the best way I can try to like express the feeling I have, or the feeling I get that most of my kin have. And it's not being talked about.
Mm.
Like we try to speak about it on social media, but it's either met with cynicism, or um, it's either ignored, which is fine. Like people are entitled to their own opinions. However, if it's something racist or if it's something ignorant, you have to own up to it. You know what I mean? Like here are the facts. Here are
Yeah.
us. We're showing that we exist. We're here,
Yeah,
bros.
and I think to add to that, I mean, people they can also get fixated on just not just the Igorot part, the whole as a whole, but just like one specific part of being Igorot, and then run with that and do the same thing as by ignoring, the discourse with Igorot people, or with people that know the culture. Like it's really interesting. I don't really know why, but I guess yeah, it goes. They're trying to hold on to that pan Filipino thing, but it's really weird. I don't know. I find it weird.
Yeah, no, that's a
Like,
good
I don't.
that's a good thing to bring up actually, because um some of
Yeah.
the things I've seen that really bother me is it not really bother me, but it's kind of interesting to me because they're promoting, like, big example, tattooing, traditional tattooing. They're promoting tattooing, and it's in the sentiment of honoring tradition. Great. Honoring Filipino tradition
Mm.
and pre-colonial culture, Filipino culture. That's great. That's awesome. But they're not including the fact that that tattooing style, that part of Igor culture has been preserved until now. And a
By
Mhm.
lot
the
of
Igorots and by
the
the Cordillerans.
by us.
Yes. Yes.
And what I'm seeing is that for a
Yeah.
lot of people that are promoting this, that are sharing the fact that there was this part of Philippine history where it was relatively erased. It was erased,
Right.
but it was still being kept by us, right? And just because like my parents don't have tattoos, just because my grandpa doesn't have tattoos, doesn't make them any less Igorot. Because the fact that
Mm.
they were Christian,
Yeah.
their grandparents had tattoos. Guarantee it. Their great grandparents, if not, if anything.
Mhm.
But like the fact that there's this whole movement, which is a great movement of promoting the pre-colonial indigenous Philippine history is great. But it's I find it interesting to me how there's a lack of acknowledgement that a lot of this indigenousness has and is still existent. For the South, it's the Lumads, and in a lot of
Yeah.
the a lot of parts in the Philippines, there are indigenous people. And for us, being
Yeah,
that we are Igorots, that's our main thing. That's what we're going to be talking about. Like we've kept that on, and
yeah.
there's really a lack of acknowledgement about that. And it's
Mhm.
crazy how there's a lot of like uh
Yeah.
all these videos on TikTok get views about these people like, oh yeah, Filipino like tattoo. Oh my god, look at that. But then like they're not like there's no mention of like us. You know what
Not
I mean?
necessarily
Like
us, but like where
Yeah.
that is from.
The
There's no
mental.
information about the tattoo
right.
itself, at least usually,
Yeah.
and or it's somewhat incorrect or the story's incomplete.
So we can even move that into music, right? Into our chants. And I think one of the things that popped up was that you guys mentioned was in that new animation, which is pretty cool though. It's called Trese. And then but there was an Ifugao chant that they used in the beginning, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wanted to come
Yeah.
better prepared about this because like I had a whole thing about it.
I don't know the chants very well, but essentially, I can give the overarching story. But essentially, it when a lot of people
we can bring it up in another podcast, the deeper.
Yeah, we could.
You can give
but yeah, just give the general idea.
Yeah,
but give the general idea. Yeah.
Essentially, so in the new Trese like anime, which is about like I guess a Filipino detective, Filipino cop, fighting supernatural things that are based off of Filipino myths and stories and all that, which is kind of cool. I never actually watched it. My wife watched it, and did you like it? Anyway, but anyway, in the intro, I believe, so there's this.
I saw part of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's this like ominous like chanting as a part of the intro along with the music. I mean, I kind of get if you don't understand, I guess, the chants, which I mean I don't. It does serve its purpose in terms of just auditory, like enacting auditory feelings or whatever, but
setting the tone.
Right, exactly. But when you dig deeper, a lot of people from Ifugao were saying, "Hey, this sounds a little familiar," and I think one of the things was, first of all, it was being labeled as a different chant, which is more of
the hood.
Yeah, exactly, the hood, which is more of a traditional chant for what's it for, like festivals and stuff like that? Or
yeah,
harvest. There you go. But it was actually a different, not a chant, but a different.
It's a song.
Yeah,
it's a song actually.
A song that tells like a totally different type of story. So yeah, a lot of Ifugao people were, I think, from the comments that I saw, they were pretty 50-50. Half of them were like, "Hey, this is cool. They're using our stuff," and the other half was like, "Hey, why?"
Yeah.
So I mean,
from
yeah, I think some of the comments I saw were.
Yeah, good.
Oh, sorry, man. I think there's a delay in my mic. Yeah. So, but I was saying like from one of the comments I saw, the guy was saying this is actually a peaceful chant. Why is this chant of this peaceful chant being used? Yeah. It's being used in a kind of like a scary format for a thriller type anime. It's like the context is not proper. So there's stuff like that where it's kind of like if you're the writer or the person who's throwing out that music and using that chant, and maybe it'd be best to do a little bit of research about it before, just because it sounds like a certain way doesn't mean you can just throw it in there. It's like when they start using that, this is not from Igorot, but like when they use those kind of crazy chants, that the Gregorian chants or whatever that they use when they're trying to like they use those like crazy chants that are all in Latin. If someone's gonna use those kind of crazy chants, I'm sure that they go and research the background, of the language. They translate the language before they actually use it and put it in a movie. You know what I mean? So it'll be the same thing. Like with a chant like this, it's like, wouldn't you do the research? So I think that was one of the complaints. That's like kind of like, guys, put things in the proper context at least. If you're going to use chants from Ifugao.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I spoke to one of our friends, Ken, who's Ifugao, and he thought it was just interesting too. Like, yeah, I agree with Gerald. I think most of the was the sentiment was like mixed 50-50. A lot of it was it was
Uh,
cool that they featured it, but also a lot of it was kind of questionable because for a lot of people they were confusing it with the hood, which is it's not. It's the song Baya Uhin from Baluha or Baya Uhin Baluha or Baluha Baya Uhin. And that's exactly what they
Aloha.
sing, and
Mm.
it's actually a love story. So I spoke to Ken, and like he was kind of like, it's cool that they're featuring an Ifugao song, but it's like out of context because it's meant to be
Yeah,
like
it's out
a
of
love song,
context. Yeah.
and he was saying that it's a song that they used to sing in elementary school as kids, right? And if you hear the original song, it's
Uh-huh.
completely different from the tone that it's being portrayed from the show. And so initially I wasn't gonna watch the show because I wasn't interested in it, but because of this whole controversy, I guess, or this whole issue, I was like, okay, I'm interested in seeing if the show is good, and I do think the show is actually pretty decent. It's interesting because it's a lot of showcasing of Filipino mythology, but it's
Yeah.
essentially it's based off of it's based off of a graphic novel. And what the graphic novel is not exactly telling stories about like Filipino myth, but using elements of Filipino mythology into a detective drama. That's basically what it is. So it's not completely like a folk story or it's not folklore per se, but it has elements of it, which is really cool because it's it's cool. Animation's all right, but yeah.
It's
So
just
like
nice to actually have something.
out there, yeah.
Sorry, I
But
was just saying it's nice to kind of have that kind of representation, something out
no,
there in a
exactly,
mainstream kind of
exactly,
place like Netflix, right?
exactly,
So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
but
think that's where some of this feeling comes, where it's like kind of half and half. Where it's like, oh man, I mean, it's awesome that we got some representation, but it's like completely out of context.
Yeah.
I
So
like it and I don't like it. I don't know how to
most of
feel.
the feeling
You
that
know?
that is somewhat against it is because of the initial tone that is being placed with that particular song. Had it been a specific
Huh?
song that fit that tone of creepiness, uh, that fit the film motif of the actual uh
Yeah.
movie intro and even the show itself. But I think the issue is more of the actual intro because the intro is set in a way where it's very, very ominous and the term creepy is the one that's being used the most.
Yeah.
Like, it's a creepy vibe. And it's so in like I took a
That's what it's
screenshot
supposed to
where
kind of give, right?
that's the whole that's what the artist is trying to portray. That's what they're trying to express.
Convey.
And that's where a lot
Yes.
of people have
Yes.
bad weird feelings about it
Yes.
because I took a screenshot where it had the song and I think it was a different song too, a different Ifugao song because there's a bunch of posts on social media where the composer was interviewed um by Variety or Vogue Philippines, by Esquire Philippines. They're
Oh, really?
being interviewed and
Yeah.
so yeah, the composer was actually fairly knowledgeable.
Mm.
And so how it happened was they got their cousin to record the song. So he went out of his way to seek out the song, and he was very knowledgeable about the actual song and the culture behind it, which is great. That's good to hear. But it still, the whole adding and the expression of how the intro was still kind of like met with mixed feelings because in in the part where the song is being played, um in one of the scenes in the subtitle it was like creepy chanting, and it's like, well, yeah, in that context it's creepy chanting the way it's being expressed. However, the chant itself
Creepy chanting.
is not
Oh my
it's not
god.
creepy. So at the
Yeah,
end of the
it's
day,
not
to me,
creepy.
it's great that the show exists. However, it's not completely, It's not completely perfect.
Yeah,
Right, but
I
weren't
personally
they
think
saying?
I
animation
guess
tank.
it's
Weren't,
kind of
weren't
like
they giving more of an update on that, saying that explaining how it actually did fit? I just can't remember.
Ooh, I've not seen that because
Oh, you
the latest
haven't? Because
latest thing I've
yeah,
seen was the Esper Philippines.
there was purpose to it. Because like you said, they knew what the song was, what it was saying, but I thought there was something where they said that it did fit in terms of what it was
is there a
saying
love
in
story that's
context.
going to come out near the end? Is there a love story that's going to come out
No.
later on
No.
I don't think so.
over
No,
the whole?
not in the same context
I
of the
haven't watched the whole thing.
No. So essentially the song itself is out of context to the whole show. But
Yeah,
I
okay.
think what Gerald's trying to say is there was a lot of artistic interpretation with the inclusion of the song to give it authenticity,
Mm.
which is nice. But like I mean if the intention of the song and the inclusion of it is valid, which to me is still kind of unless I get the artist's actual interpretation, then because to me it's lost to me, right? And art is subjective, so but this is where the conversation is even more so where like despite like in spite of art being subjective, um is are things that are culturally sensitive like hands off, you know? Should it be used? When
Mm.
can we use it? And should we even use it at all? So, I mean,
Yeah,
even for
that's the
us,
question.
in a lot of ways, for us, for BBAC, there can be an argument be made where we're taking a lot of artistic liberties when it comes to like performance, right? There's a lot that can be said depending on who you talk to.
I think it's
Someone who's
different when Igorot people actually do it.
true.
when Igorot people are doing an interpretation, kind of taking ownership of their own dance, and then they're kind of adding some evolution to it. It's different than when someone else is kind of doing it, and they haven't even like contacted the community or
Mhm.
even like researched it. They just kind of like learned it from a dance video that they saw like some dance troupe do and stuff, and that dance troupe never even talked to Igorot people about like the rituals or even why they do those dances, or they just make up
Mhm.
some shit. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Whole can
Yeah,
of
so
worms.
yeah.
I
We went
mean,
off tangent.
I know, totally off, but I think what makes the Trese situation
but
is
it's a good discussion.
It's a little bit more complicated than some of the other just blatant like forms of misappropriation, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My favorite
It's but
favorite
it there's
argument my favorite argument is like, but aren't we all just Filipinos? Sorry, Mark, what were you gonna say?
I mean, no. I was kind of laughing about it because it's true. That's the common. I don't know. It's argument, but also misunderstanding. Because when and it's like the nationalistic point of view that like even some people would rather take, especially in terms of politics back in the Philippines. There's a whole nationalist kind of view where it's like these individual groups don't matter, and some of the people, like some politicians, are really trying to push the whole national identity versus like indigenous group here, indigenous group there. And there's some people who say, oh, the reason they don't want to do that is because they don't want to support indigenous groups. Why should they be so special compared to everybody else? You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to like, of course, we go to land issues. We go to like kind of like proper respect to the people who are on that land, and also like their history and the overall history of the Philippines and what the struggles that people have gone through. That's where I think that whole national identity thing has to be kind of like, it isn't so black and white, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And and for folks who are growing up abroad, it's easy to take that whole thing's, oh, we're just all Filipino. We're just all Filipino. But for people who are taking that stance and because they've grown up abroad, I think it would be wise, or I would encourage them to take the stance of trying to learn a little bit more about maybe where they're from, where their family is, and to learn the small little nuances that make them special.
Mm-hmm.
It's like for example, they always talk about kapangpangan food, and those people in the area always cook really good, right? That's a cultural thing that those people have, and it's true because my uncle married one, and their family, they cook some awesome and amazing food, and it's there all those little nuances that everybody's got, like in their culture, from their area. I think that's the kind of thing that people need to latch onto and learn about. So I would deeply encourage that. And then when you start to realize those kind of things, you start to realize, oh, I have this special thing that's part of my area. And I think then they'll start to realize that we're not just pan Filipino, it's this diversity that makes us fucking awesome. It's not just because we're just all Filipino, No, what makes Filipinos awesome is the diversity and the fact that we kind of somehow made this all work. You know what I'm saying? And despite the things that make us a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So we got that history, for example, with the Ilocanos and the Igorots. We have a long history of trade with these guys, even before the Spaniards came.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think when you recognize those kind of things in terms of the history and what's special in your culture, that you can really learn to appreciate that there are so many flavors that make us, if you want to talk about pan-Filipino, that makes just being Filipino awesome. But what we're asking here is that you recognize our flavor. You know what I'm saying? And when you want to put our flavor on, you tell people where you got it from. Right? I'm not gonna go around and be like, let me think of something like
Yeah, that's a
let's
really
say
good
this
point.
caldereta, right? If I cook this caldereta, that's like my auntie's recipe, and she's kapangpangan. I'm not gonna go say this is an Igorot recipe. I'm gonna say that's from my auntie, and that's her flavor, man. I learned it from her, and I just want to I want to ingest it a little bit. It's Filipino, but I recognize that's her recipe, man. That's her thing, and I am honoring that. And so when I cook it, I'm honoring her. I'm not saying that's me. Oh man, that's my auntie, or that's my grandma, or something like that, or whatever. And it's I think in some ways, kind of like in terms of our representation, I think if you have that kind of mindset, then it'll help you understand the richness of who we are as a people.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you say I'm pan Filipino, it's a whole different flavor. It's a whole different sauce, man. It's a whole different way of thinking. Instead of just like this, this kind of like covering that just says Filipino, Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Gerald.
No. I love the way you explained that. That's actually perfect. Because I mean, I think a lot of people are trying to find their identity, and fair enough. Like, I guess that's a good place to start, perhaps. But you're right. Like, trying to figure out, trying to dig a little bit deeper and figure out, a little bit more specifics of where you're from, not just being Filipino. I mean, like, some people get hung up on the fact that we were, what was the expression of us being tattooed?
O pintados.
Yeah, we're just the painted people, right?
Yep.
And everybody that
Oh,
always
right,
comes
right.
up. But then when people say that and then flash like an image on the screen, but it's like those images of people in not Igorot, but somewhere lowland or wherever, where essentially it's
The
a little bit
South,
harder. A lot of that
like
culture has been
Mindanao.
lost. Yeah, a lot of that has been lost. A little bit harder to find that information. But
Yeah.
just because we were the island of the painted people doesn't mean that's the same as the stuff that our ancestors wore. Like, but yeah, I mean, just digging a little bit deeper. I think that's a good way to put it. It's just
The Boxer
and the
Codex,
food.
when was that made? Like, right? The Boxer Codex, what you're basically like referring to, that was in like the 1500s.
Oh yeah, the Boxer
Right?
Codex.
That's the one that they're always like sharing, which
Always,
is
yes.
great. Like, that's a great aspect of Philippine history. But that was like that was 5 centuries ago. That was before it was even formally a Spanish colony. So
Yeah.
you're saying, Jared?
Yeah. So I mean, people just get stuck on certain things, and then are good enough with that. But really, you should try and just find your flavor and dig a little deeper. Maybe you'll find that kare recipe that you've always wanted. Anyway, we
Especially
stopped
the one from your own family. There's always gonna be something, right?
Yeah, exactly. We kind of stopped watching this
Get back to the video.
this video.
Oh,
Maybe
man.
we should go back
we
into
have
it.
to edit this somehow. So
I mean, that's fine. We
okay,
went
let's see this. Sorry, guys.
We went on a bit of a tangent because I mean, I think that's what we just need to incorporate more. Is just, I mean, we do it anyway, but we just need to talk about things that are affecting us in the diaspora. So, but not just us, but all of you as well in the diaspora. So, just like we said earlier, any comments under about your experiences or maybe things related to whatever we're talking, I mean, it would be really helpful to have that discourse in the comments, or even just like messaging us or whatever it is, whatever mode. Yeah, just because we have our experiences, but we would love to see everybody else's. Ours are a bit focused on Western Canada, Western America, UK, London. So, and there's Igorot people everywhere, and you find that out when you attend things like IICs where people come from everywhere, and just like, it's unreal. I didn't even know like there was such a big group of or such an active group of Igorots in like places like Vienna and just random places. So yeah.
The ICBE is big. So the ICBE is the IIC of the Europe, and so they have theirs every 2 years, and so like they have a really good website actually. Auntie Yvonne, who's the one who's kind of like been really good online. She's been able to like put all the things that have happened online on the website. So
Nice.
if anybody gets a chance to check out ICBE as well in on a Google search to see
do you attend that regularly?
Igorot communities in Europe. What?
Have you been able to attend that, or are you attending it regularly?
Yeah, I attended the last one, and that was the last time I wore my my grandfather's wanus. Actually, my great grandfather's wanus before. I was we performed over there. We danced together. I don't really want to say perform, but we did our dances together, and I think that was in Amsterdam. So that was a good time, man. That was a really good one. That was the last one I went to before the lockdown.
Is there a big
and they were
community
gonna do
there
another
in
big
Amsterdam?
workshop. Yeah, there's a good size community over there. But they're spread all over like Italy, and they all have their own groups. Germany, Austria, like there's all these different groups. And so obviously it was inspired by the IIC, which is the big national worldwide conference. But they wanted to make sure it's kind of because it was kind of like this way to make sure that like to inspire each other in our groups, because everybody's like have all these smaller groups. But in Europe, it's so easy to kind of just fly and come. It's like 50 pounds sometimes 50 to 80 pounds round trip sometimes, depending on the deals. So it kind of works out for us here in Europe to have these kind of things. It's nice. It's nice.
Where or
Yeah.
what country or region or area was the most surprising that you learned had a Igorot community or Cordilleran community? In Europe, at least from these.
Damn, I've been to one in Europe. I've been to I went to one in Italy. I mean, I had heard there was a big Filipino community over there, but I have to say the one in Amsterdam I didn't know was as like they work really well. The ones in Amsterdam. Yeah, I guess I'd say the ones in Amsterdam, that they're a really tight community. You just kind of like you don't think about that, right? Well, especially if you're from like either Canada or America, and you never really have gone there, you just don't know, So I felt like I was really surprised about how well they coordinated themselves in Amsterdam. It was really cool. But I did go to the one in Italy, and I think Italy has the largest amount of Filipino immigrants right now.
Really?
Filipinos, just in general,
Oh, wow.
including TNT, I guess. Yeah, and there's a huge community, and I think they fill in the gap of basically all the Italians that move out of the country, because there are a ton of Italians that just once they graduate university, they know there's not that much money there, so a lot of them leave, and so the Filipinos take over that whole sector where there's not that many people working. They fill in that gap, and
Right.
so economically they've been doing pretty decent out there.
Nice.
Wow.
And
I had
yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, when you said Amsterdam, I
Yeah.
was definitely surprised. So cool. Yeah, I didn't realize the time, so maybe we'll just get back into the video, because pretty much at the end of the video I have to go
Oh
get my
jeez,
kid.
man. Well, that was
So-
like an hour-long tangent.
Yeah.
Pretty much. We've watched 6 minutes of the
One.
video, 6.5. All right. So let's continue with the videos. I mean,
Oops.
from here on, there's a lot of it, a good chunk is just them telling the story. So, yeah, I haven't heard them yet, properly at least. So this will be interesting. This first one will be, oh, maybe she'll say it, but Benita and the Binobodan, an Ifugao story, since we were already talking about Ifugao chant. So there you go, perfect.
Binobodan,
Oh yeah.
an
There you go.
Ifugao story. Written by Marlon Martin, edited by Liwliwang Malabed, illustrated by Kaizel Kotiwan. My name is Benita Balanto, 66 years old, and I am a weaver.
Oh.
I was born in the village of Kudog,
Still
in
young.
Magawe, Ifugao. My mother, like most women in my village, was a weaver. I remember when I was a child, I was my mother's assistant. Every time I was out playing, I would hear my mother calling, waving rods and threads in her arms. I imagined those balls of yarn mocking me. They bounced around in my mind, so happy to see me dragged away from the games we used to play. Of course, I would grumble. My grumbling would continue while I passed the yarns to the loom header and then to my mother. Back and forth 1,000 times. I would have reached Kiangan and back again if I were to add all those little steps it took to warp a fabric just to make a tiny skirt for me. You can imagine my muttering when my mother decides to warp a whole blanket. Even now that I have grown up and have a family of my own, weaving is still part of my life. From a weaver's assistant, I decided to do weaving myself. In the weaving village of Amganad, Banawe, all my neighbors were weavers, and they were eager to teach me. We wove traditional garments that we sold to other villages. It was difficult at first, but just like my mother, my teachers were patient until I was able to perfect my first plain striped fabric. After mastering the weaving of palahan skirts of the Burnay people, I saw the Binobodan or ikat fabric that the senior weavers were making for the Kiangan people. I heard of an old weaver who was a munbobod. Her name was Kitayan, and she was a master ikat weaver in the village. Kitayan knew the Amganad weaver, Kahimngan Palatik, who learned the ikat technique from the Kiangans and taught it to her villagers. They wove the traditional ikat loincloths and skirts of the Kadangyan, the Ifugao noble class. I visited Ina Kitayan and she willingly showed me how Binobodan was done. It was harder than I imagined, but I wanted to learn, so I patiently followed the step-by-step process. Soon enough, I was bringing my first ikat weaves to the Banawe market and bringing home food for our family. I learned the standard designs for traditional Ifugao ikat, but I also came up with new ones. Again, the threads are beckoning to me. They are now my tools, my friends, my playmates. I think hard, play the patterns in my mind, visualize what it would look like. Then I start tying the patterns on the warp. There is no room for error, for there is no way of correcting your patterns once you cast the die. More people want to buy my Binobodan, but one can only weave so much. So my boys and girls would assist me in the warping and winding threads into balls. You see, when you ask one to help you, you need to ask them all. Otherwise, you'll end up with no one. And just like my mother, I pulled them away from their games and taught them a skill they can use. I'm glad I did. 4 of my daughters are now weavers, and the art of Binobodan lives with them.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love those patterns, man. Yeah. Ah, it's such a great story.
Ifugao Nation, man. They're crazy.
Yeah, they're strong. They're strong in their heritage, you know. And
Dalupig
their stories
and
are
the
are
Isnag
strong.
Badu, an Apayao story.
Oh.
Written by Joy Peace Liapitan and Annalyn Salvador Amores. Illustrated by Jed Alanggi. A young Isnag man, Dalupig, lives in a village in Pudtol, Apayao. He is industrious and gentle, and everyone in the village adores him. He lives with his grandmother, Ako Maginay, who was once a Durarakit. A Durarakit is a respected spiritual guide of the village. Ako Maginay always talks of the past, how they happily lived in Daya, an Isnag community in the mountains. This was the time before they were driven to the lowlands by the rebels. She remembers how people ran away with what they can carry, leaving behind the precious heirlooms of the Isnag.
Wow.
Their beads, their precious colorful clothing, and even the jars. Now, they are living in the Patad, but they still speak the Isnag language. One afternoon, Ako Maginay brings out an old wooden chest hidden underneath her bed and shows its contents to the Lipug. There are colorful clothes that were given to her by her mother when she was young, and the garment that her husband gave as a gift when they got married. They are beautifully embroidered and intricately adorned. Ako Maginay slowly lays them out on the floor for the Lipug to see. There is the Arigririhi, there is a Binabalu and Sinayunga. Here is the Dinahat and the Balandan. There are also other blankets used during the Sayam or ritual celebration. The Lipug turns to his Ako and asks, I am an Isnag and I live with other Isnag. But why do I not see anyone wear these beautiful clothes, Ako? Apo, you see our people wear Isnag clothing, but not the authentic ones made by our ancestors. The ones worn in cultural festivals, like the Nangitit Badu or dark blouses, lack the soul. They only imitate the true Isnag textiles. We do not see the real ones.
I have
because
to make
they
a
were
comment on that
buried
because if
with
you
their
look at
owners.
this is
His
Isnag
grandmother replies.
Tapis, but there's what he's saying in the story is really it. I mean, I think it goes across the board in all the cultures. It's like that. It's because they're mass producing a lot of stuff, and of course they know that people in the diaspora kind of want to reconnect, so they're selling them. But it's true, like a lot of that like extra stuff, like I was telling you,
Yeah.
like my grandmother's tapis has all this extra stuff in it. But when you look at the one that you can just get from the store, they're beautiful, but they just kind of lack a lot of those extra things, you know, and extra details. And like this is cool, but it definitely lacks some of that. What I've noticed, especially now that more and more are being mass produced, and you know, there is that response to the folks back in the diaspora who are like, hey, you know, we want our traditional clothing, but this is a trip that they're even mentioning this in this story. That
Yeah, actually.
some
Pretty
of the stuff
interesting.
that's being produced out there is lacking a lot of the soul. Yeah. It's lacking a lot of the soul of that. What would be the real, more traditional stuff, and it's in one of the things I really like about the story so far is people don't understand how important these blankets were to our folks back in the day, because we use these in rituals. It's like ritual blankets. I mean, when you look at when we do the dances, right? Why on earth are we when we do dances we use the blankets?
Yeah.
Cause they meant a lot.
Yeah.
One, there was recognition of the patterns on them for ritual purpose, and then the other ones, like people knew how long it took to make these things, and it's like when you eat somebody's cooking, right? When grandma does it, it tastes awesome. If you do it, it's kind of right. It's a little bit like that.
True.
But like when you can appreciate it when somebody puts their heart and soul into something, and I think that's what makes a lot of it, that makes these, other than just the patterns and it was intentionally made for ritual purpose, that's what makes these things so amazing. And that's why when we do dance, you know, so for people who are doing our traditional dances, especially our folks, when we're doing like penanyuan or any kind of dance where you're doing the blanket, we're not just like throwing a blanket around. You have to think with that mentality, like there's meaning in this blanket for this ritual and what we're doing, you know. That's why I'm exchanging it with you. My blanket and your blanket are being exchanged. So those things are part of the dance as well in terms of the mindset. And it's awesome that he's talking about the importance of some of these different these special ritual blankets and stuff, and yeah. Anyways, sorry, another tangent. I just wanted to share that part.
Yeah, no, that's I mean definitely true, because that's a complete opposite of other things that are happening now, where essentially they minimize the importance of the whatever we're using, that the clothing, the little patterns and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome that they're putting this in the book.
Basically, it's not just a prop. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, like, again, like when we're dancing and sharing blankets, it's not just a prop. There's a functionality in terms of what's happening in the ritual. You know?
All right, keep going.
Dalupig is stunned by what Ako shared.
Yeah.
He silently watched Ako Maginay fold and return the garments in the old chest. You will understand, Apo. You will understand. These are the only ones I took with me when we fled our home. I kept these all these years. These are my treasures from the past. Ako Maginay explains to her grandson. Still thinking about Ako Maginay's wonderful chest of clothes, Dalupig takes a walk around the village. He sits under a kamagong tree to get out of the harsh heat of the sun. The cool breeze makes Dalupig fall asleep and dream. In Dalupig's dream, the ancestor spirits take him to his Ako's village, to the past. The villagers wear the Isnag's traditional clothes, like the treasures in Ako Maginay's chest. In the old village, there are gallant and respected men who wear the Badu and the ipot. There is a durarakit with an iku, or a miniature axe tucked on her headdress. The durarakit explains what the patterns on the Isnag clothing mean. The inari grihi is the most important and highly prized upper garment. It is decorated with puntas in different colors and patterns. It is only worn by the affluent Isnag. Layers of blue and red fabric tucked into the armhole, called pinuntasan, symbolize true Isnag spirit. There is the balaku, or the scallop pattern that refers to the Sinulong River. The sinabungan symbolizes the flower of the wild rice. The kamamay, the smallest and finest rice variety of Isnag, celebrates productivity and abundance. There is the sinan-ahamay, or centipede pattern, that serves as a protection from bad spirits, and the zigzag patterns that represent the mountains of Ngahan. The durarakit explains to Dalupig, we dye our threads from the fibers and bark of the trees. Later, we barter with the lowlanders for yards of dyed textile from Ilocos. We make this intricate embroidery so no one can copy it, to make it different from the others. In the Siam, you will see all of these. Just when the durarakit starts the ritual, Dalupig wakes up. He looks at his village. He sees Ako Maginay, whose eyesight is failing. He remembers her bidding to dress her up in her Isnag Badu when the time comes for her to go. This will ensure that her ancestors will recognize her in the next life. As Dalupig walks back home, he vows to learn more about his culture, to sit and talk with the remaining elders in his village, to preserve the traditional clothes that his Isnag ancestors once wore.
That is awesome, man. That is
Great, dude.
over there. For folks who don't know, Professor Annalyn Salvador Amores, she's the one that really shared what's been happening. At least she's the one I've been communicating to, who's been sharing what's been going on with the museum, and really shared this video for us to use, and so I really appreciate it. Thank you, Annalyn, Professor Annalyn. Man, that's such a great story, right, guys?
Is
That's
mind
so
blowing
awesome.
because
It's real. Yeah.
yeah, but like it's I've always wanted to learn more. I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause it here. I always wanted to learn more about like
Yeah.
Apayao and like the whole Isnag thing. I mean,
Patterns.
even though my dad isn't technically Isnag, they migrated there to Apayao. I mean, they were still what's it called, knee deep in the culture though. They were still totally part of it. So, but yeah, it's super interesting. It's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. That was just mind blowing for me. If they could
One
do
of the cool-
stuff like this for like
Yeah,
all,
one of
all
the
provinces and then and tattooing as well, unreal.
yeah.
Oh, but there
They
wouldn't be
are
a
doing it
kid's
for every,
story
if
with
you notice, they're
tattooing.
going through every province, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll see. They have a lot of projects that's coming up, which I'm really excited about. There's gonna be a whole video series on the tattoos coming up soon. So she said it's
Wow.
taking a long time just because there's a lot of detail. But that's what Professor Annalyn said. But
that's what's awesome.
one thing I wanted to mention was what was really, yeah. Did you notice that they mentioned how they got the textiles and stuff from the Ilocos people?
Lowlanders, yeah.
And that was one of the things that I was told. Yeah, that because remember I was mentioning that like there was a healthy trade, despite the whole Spanish divide and conquer thing. There was a healthy trade between us and the Ilocos people and those in Pangasinan area. And it's because we didn't have all the resources. They could grow the textile down there, and my Juanas, the one that came from my great grandfather, the one that got stolen, but like you can tell the difference of the material that's made now, which is the material they use now is really strong, but that material you can see like that old school material that was actually from the Ilocos region and traded back up. You can kind of like I remember the feeling. I'm like, wow, this is. I asked my mom. I said, Mom, this material that's on here is much different. She goes like, yeah, it's because they used to trade with the Ilocos, the people from the Ilocano areas, and then they would do all the rest when they bring it back home. All the other, they would reattach the weaving, and then or dye. They would dye it themselves using like whatever, like betel nut or something like that, whatever they do to get the colors that they wanted. But I thought it was cool that they just kind of mentioned that like, so even though there was a lot of tribal fighting between areas, there was also a lot of trading. So in terms of like what's myth and what's legend and what was true and what was not true, did we get along or we didn't get along? I think these kind of things have to be taken into consideration, especially when you need to trade to get things that you don't easily have. Like, for example, another one, salt. Like my mom would say, salt was so precious. So back then, you get your rice and you try to get some salt, and then you'd like try to use that salt and really sparingly just to like flavor your food and stuff. And of course, it's the people in the lowlands that are gonna have the salt compared to the people up in the mountains, right? So what do we have in the mountains though? Gold. So that's a pretty fair trade. Gold. Anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there before I kind of forgot. That's why sometimes I jump in, because it's like, oh man, I got to get it before that memory or that thought passes through. But hey man, I think that's awesome that like you got to see something that's kind of connected more towards your heritage and stuff, and where your family moved to. On that
pretty
side.
interesting.
'Cause,
I mean, when we were
I've
there,
always appreciated it. Yeah.
my aunt was offering to give, I think, Audrey one of her old ones. And we were like,
really?
yeah, I don't know. We kind of felt bad because I didn't want to take it, but I don't know. We'll see, I guess, in the future.
I know.
But Yeah, it's
Was it for your wedding? Was it for your wedding, or was it the last time?
no, just the last time we went
Was
because
it for
that was
your wedding, or was it the last time you were there?
last
Oh,
time.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. We were because that was the first
Yeah.
time we went to Apayao. Like I've never been there before, so
Oh, wow.
all right.
That's so cool, man.
Um,
I know how you feel. I don't know if you want to take those things or not.
yeah, it's. I mean, if it was, I mean, if my parent, it was from my parents, yeah. But then I don't know. We'll see. I think just because of timing, maybe we can do one more story and then we could save the couple that are left maybe for Jay to join next time. Just so he can see it. I don't think he's seen this
Yeah,
video
yeah.
anyway, so yeah. So we'll go into I guess another
Yeah, I think you'd
story.
really enjoy these for sure.
Yeah, I didn't I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, right? This is awesome, man.
kids books.
Kids books. They're the best, isn't it? It's so better to watch this than I mean I love the academia stuff, don't get me wrong. But this is so much more absorbable.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, it's personal stories, right?
Fata'an
Personal stories
and
is
her
so much.
Tilar, a
I mean, that's what
Bontoc
we're trying to share
reading
here
story,
too. So
written by Annalyn Salvador Amores and illustrated by Kelly Ramos. In the
Oh, it's
village of
Annalyn's.
Can-o
Cool.
in Bontoc, at the end of the harvest season, the mothers taught their young children how to weave on a pinahon. Fata'an learned how to weave at a young age. She started with a small piece of cloth. As she grew, she wove longer and longer cloth on her practice loom that her father made. Fata'an watched the old women weave special kinds of garments for the dead. These are specially woven clothes for the Kachangyan, the rich people in Bontoc. The upper garment for the women is pure white with
The Kadangyan.
minamata designs. Fata'an found the eye-like designs comforting. It is like the eyes of her ancestors watching over her. There were also blankets with lines of dark colors, and loincloths with a special weave for the elder Kachangyan male. Fata'an wanted to learn how to weave all these garments, but it is prohibited for a young woman to weave death garments. The elders believe that a young woman who weaves these will not bear children. The time came when Fata'an had to leave the village to go to Poblacion. She then got married and started a family in Baguio City. Far from Can-o, she never forgot how to weave. Her weaving is like a thread that binds her to her village. She practiced on her pinahod, then learned how to weave on a tilar, or the footloom of the Ilocanos. Using a footloom, she could weave longer cloths that she can sell for a higher price. Fata'an asked her husband, Tanungan, who was a carpenter, to make a tilar. With her own footloom, she can continue weaving in her home and take care of her small children. One day, Fata'an saw the two backstrap looms she inherited. Her mother also got them from her own mother, Apayao. She remembered how patient her mother was in teaching her how to weave when she was young. She recalled her mother patiently moving the warp and weft over and over to produce the designs on the fabric. She suddenly missed her village, the place where she grew up, where she learned how to weave. Fata'an returned home to Can-o. She gathered the women there, showing them how they can improve their weaving. Her husband taught the men how to build footlooms for their wives. Soon, the women were producing colorful skirts and blankets on their own Tilar. These skirts and blankets were brought to Bontoc Poblacion and sold there. Now, whenever she goes home to Kan-o, Fata'an hears the sound of weaving in her village. She is happy to hear the shuttles running back and forth over the wefts of the loom in every household. She smiles and is pleased to see her people weaving again. The old weavers continue to weave the death garments, while the younger women weave the colorful blankets that we see in the public market today. In Baguio, Fata'an continues to teach her friends and students on how to weave. First, on their backstrap looms, and then on the Tilar.
Wow, that was cool. I love this resurgence in terms of just our people like learning the old ways of like weaving and just it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like this whole revival of our culture and pride taking in it. It's awesome, man.
And it's not even.
It really
it's
feels
also-
good in the soul to know that.
The themes are like passing down. The
Right.
theme is like moving
Yeah,
to the next.
yeah.
Right. It's really cool.
And look at
The
the
next
thing
generation.
with the foot looms, I guess. Did you know that was from Ilocano? I had no idea.
That's what I was gonna
So
ask.
there you go.
Like earlier, I
No.
was asking like the
Well, that
difference
makes-
in the looms.
That makes sense. That's why, yeah. Usually, what you see is the hand ones, right? The ones you sling on the side. So,
Yeah,
That
the
makes-
normal
that makes
ones you have in the
sense.
house. Right.
and I think it's
right.
important for people to know that. I mean, this isn't just stories. There's real things with actual research. So it's pretty accurate what is being told
Right.
here. So that's interesting. These are
Mhm.
blowing my
Anna
mind, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Lindiger-
That's crazy.
Yeah, Anna Lindbitter Homer. That's what I appreciate.
It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's a great researcher, man, and she's like on the forefront of really trying to share the culture. So it's so much appreciated. It's amazing.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the children's stories are blowing my mind a little bit because I love hearing these like real life stories coming
Yeah.
out from here.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, the big looms. I didn't know that they're Ilocano looms, but that kind of makes sense because in terms of like larger production, it would probably start on the lowlands first, right?
Right, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So interesting.
So
This is
Yeah,
about
that was cool.
halfway-ish. I
you know
think we're gonna
what? One
stop
of the things that
videos
stood
here.
out to me was
Yep, go ahead.
oh, but let me just add one thing before we end. The one thing that stood out because I was thinking, part of the things I was wondering was like how come my grandma didn't teach more people when she was young, and maybe who knows, maybe it has. I don't know if that cultural taboo of young girls learning is across the board in Mountain Province or just in Bontoc. But that could have been one of the reasons why a lot of younger folks didn't learn it to begin with, was because of that cultural taboo. Where it's like, oh, we shouldn't.
Mhm.
You don't teach them at such a young age because if you teach them, they might become infertile or not be able to have children. And that was like one of the greatest things you can have in the culture is to be fertile, right? And to have offspring. So I wonder if that taboo had to deal. It's kind of like with the prevention of the proliferation of weaving, and where to the point where a lot of this almost died until like the cultural pride was brought back up again. You know what I mean?
Not really sure, because weren't they saying that it was just the death garments that they couldn't? They could do the regular ones.
That's
Oh,
true.
okay. I didn't
But
capture
I
that
think Mark
part.
has a
So that
point
was
where when
that
it
was.
comes to
Mhm.
the younger generation being pushed to do other things rather than taking up the practice, right?
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe we
that's
could
another
ask.
aspect too. That's
I
another
wonder if we could
aspect. I
ask
mean,
somebody
like,
about that.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Who
yeah.
could
maybe
we
people could
ask?
share their personal stories.
That's what I've been
Yeah,
trying
that's
to get to.
Yeah.
Like, I've
no,
been
that's
trying to yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
no. I was just gonna say, yeah, that's true. Like, people can share their stories about anything weaving as well. Like, if they know it, if they learnt it. If I mean, let us know. We can share those stories too. Because just yeah, and in what circumstances did you learn it? Like, were
Yeah,
you
exactly.
allowed to, do the death
Yeah.
garments, or were you forbidden as well? Like, yeah, we'd love to
Share it
know.
down below.
I mean, there's definitely a factor of people just kind of like going with what's the mainstream, and if your focus is more on education and trying to find a way out to provide for your family, then sometimes people would that's what they would focus on, right?
Mhm.
You know, versus like some of the cultural traditions.
Yeah,
It's always, I think I find in our culture sometimes it's like what's practical first, right?
exactly.
And sometimes that's the undoing of the culture. Sometimes it's like what's just practical first. No, let's get educated, see if we can provide for our
Nursing.
families and stuff like that. And I don't know. Yeah, nursing. It's one of those things where it's like, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, yes, it's true. We need to be practical. Yeah, I know. I wish I was a nurse, but but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like that practical aspect it's important, but it's like at the cost of your soul. You know what I mean? As a people,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I
it's
mean,
difficult,
should really just be a hybrid.
challenging one.
I mean, I think that's what we and a lot of people are heading towards, like a hybrid of those, right? So that'd be pretty
Indeed.
great.
Indeed.
Like, if we could just continue with
Right,
that.
right.
Yeah, like I work full time, but I still do a lot of the.
Yeah,
We do this, right? Still do bebop.
yeah.
Wish I had
But
more time.
because the awareness it's there. The awareness is there now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The awareness to connect is there,
Right. The
and to
awareness
bridge ourselves with our ancestors.
and yeah, things have just been
That's probably
coming up more, and it's just like getting really frustrating. So it's just like that's why I kind of hopefully we can do things like this more, and or within our organization or whatever, just because yeah, we just need to keep on going, because
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, the stuff we're seeing and hearing about, and it's just nonstop, and I don't know, it's getting frustrating already. I mean, we were all frustrated already, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of that. But
I don't think
we'll
there
see
ever
what.
will.
No, it's true, but I mean, we can try to do as much as we can, and again,
Exactly.
just that as long as we can battle it with perhaps awareness or education, whatever we can do, right? So yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
funny because Ido's approach is much different than mine, and sometimes I'm not so sure about it, but I'll have to say this because in preparation of this, I was of this podcast, I knew we were kind of gonna get into appropriation again, so I kind of listened to a bit of our original appropriation podcast, and like I think one of the things that was said there, you said, Mark, was that that anger is that first step to creating change, and then but we have to move on from the anger, and then continue with the momentum from that, and follow up, so we can actually get the change happening. So yeah, so it's good. I have to say, people,
Yeah.
it's good for people to be more outspoken. Good job.
Oh,
that's not me.
because it's my personal Instagram, so I don't care. Like
Right.
the feelings I have for that that I share on my personal Instagram is towards the people I know, because these are the same people that are very like pro multicultural and all that stuff. So
Right.
they should understand how I feel.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, hands off. But I do agree with you, Gerald. Like, very much have to have a very level-headed approach, especially as a group. But yeah, there is anger.
But no, it's true. I mean, like at least with say, let's just say your method or whatever, you just kind of put it all out there. At least stuff actually goes out there where say my approach would be a little bit different, where I kind of had to think about it a lot more, and sometimes it just fizzles out and nothing comes out of it. So at least something comes out of approaches like yours and whatever. So
Shotgun method, man.
But yeah, I mean, combination of both, I think, will work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like the idea is that energy is supposed to be able to transform. So sometimes, that anger. What I learned is like anger and calmness are like two sides of the same coin. So like part of that idea to get that calm and peace that you want is you have to sometimes feel the initial anger, right? And it's that motivation that you want something to change. But then again, that anger has to transform into something else that's actually more useful than just being angry. And then that's when you have to like kind of like moderate that energy, transform it and move into things like organizing, planning, teaching, that kind of thing. Being able to spread the word, help other people become aware, that kind of thing, education or whatever. So it's all these processes, but the anger can also bring about awareness. But overall, we want to be able to share our feelings on kind of like a level-headed kind of mindset, which is what you're going for, right? So what your approaches may seem different, but they're actually part of one from one spectrum to the other, but you have to figure out how do we get from one end to the other, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
And the hardest part in anything is the transition and the transformation. How do we get that stuff in between? And I think creatively having discussions like this and looking at things that are educating us, but also educating those out there who are watching us. I mean, I think this is that part in the middle we're talking about, that transfer, that where we can transform that energy, and then build up that awareness. So that's just my 2 cents.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'll keep the rest of this video for hopefully for when Jay comes back. I'll stop the video here, but then
we try to get Amanda in.
Yeah, we could.
Oh yeah, forgot about her.
So maybe we try to get Amanda in too.
Yeah, I didn't really think of a. I wasn't able to think of a final question. I forgot actually. But It's okay. Maybe I'll think of one for next time. Because I gotta
Okay.
drop off pretty soon anyway.
Oh, it's
So-
not really over right now.
No, it might
It's not.
just
It's
be
not really over. So. 'cause
Oh, that's
we-
right. Yeah.
It might just be a part 2 of this podcast. Maybe we'll split this into 2. I mean,
Right.
it hasn't gone as long as we usually go anyway.
Can
so-
be.
Really? It has been 3 hours almost, right?
Well, not recording.
Oh. Oh, right.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Not recording.
Yeah.
Although we did one whole hour of pretty much full tangent, and then we did another. Yeah, actually, it's almost 3 hours. We did another hour and a half of this, I think, right?
Yeah.
With discussion in between each story.
Yeah. It's the stuff people don't see, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in terms of this one, I'm not sure if this is going to be part 1 or this is just going to be as is. Yeah, thank you for watching, listening, wherever you're watching and or listening from. And we'll see you in the next one. Hopefully I'll have an interesting question then, because I totally forgot to think of one this time. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you, on part 2 or on the
Thank
next
you,
one.
everybody.